I want to share some advice that I wish I received when I started to get on my creative journey. And in honesty, I've spent a large part of my life experimenting, being creative, and trying new things. I was a professional musician for a while. I dabbled in painting. I loved to draw as a kid. So there's been this common thread in my life of always wanting to pursue the arts. Now, of course, life and work and business gets in the way of that, but I always try and at least weave in creativity in whatever pursuit I'm attaining next. And whenever you express yourself, you're putting an idea out into the universe, and there's going to be feedback, there's going to be criticisms, there's going to be praise. So I'm going to break down some tips and advice that I wish I had when I started off this journey, and I'm going to try and not sound like an ass as I get through this. You know, I think it's natural to want to try and measure everything in numbers or quantify your creativity. But yet, creativity cannot be quantified so easily. For example, the YouTube metrics, the analytics, the constant pursuit of more engagement or more subscribers or followers. There's an endless supply of numerical data that will cause you to get overwhelmed, as well as set your sights on the wrong task. These are quantitative measurements that don't actually move the creative needle within you. I've realized in myself that my creative pursuits come in sprints. It wouldn't last the whole day. There'd be a fine window of opportunity to, I guess, capitalize on my creative output in any given day. This is common amongst people that want to be creative. It can't last all day. And when you look at famous people in the world, the people who do this the best, it's common for the best writers in the world or the best painters to do it for anywhere from like 2 to 6 hours a day. Now, by any modern measurement of productivity, if you want to call it that, working somewhere between 4 to 6 hours a day seems downright lazy. But I guess what I'm realizing is different about this sprint is that it's unitasking. This is the only thing I'm focused on whenever I'm being creative. I'm not distracted by my phone. That's away in another room. I don't have my email open. I turn notifications off, or at least try to. I am solely focused on the task that's in front of me, whether that's creating videos, filming them, editing, scripting. I try and keep my creative pursuit delegated to one task at a time. But what looks to be true with creative pursuits is that input does not equal output, meaning the more time you spend on a creative pursuit doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be better. I can't tell you the amount of times I've been staring at a screen, sat behind my drums, trying to be creative. Best thing that I could possibly do for myself is to go to bed, come back to this project with fresh eyes, a rested mind. And every single time I've done that, whatever task was in front of me that looked like it was going to take the rest of the day, when I look at it, it's like, oh, I just need to do X, Y, and Z, and I'll get this done bish bash bosh in 30 minutes or an hour. And it always works every single time. So when you realize that you don't have to burn the midnight oil just to get some more creative morsel out of yourself, the best approach is to have more of a holistic life. So going to the movies, having a long lunch. Once you've completed your task for the day, getting your creative pursuit, call it quits. Realize that you're done for the day and let your mind rest. Hang out with friends, go read a book, but all the while your subconscious is working to figure out the next step. Now, these orbiting tasks were part of the creative work. You know, I'm getting a bit into the weeds here, but I guess what I'm trying to say is this balance to life is key to being a highly creative person. But my process always has to start with getting ideas out of my head and documented somewhere. I have to remind myself that this is so key to the creative process because I have to build this up almost as a habit. And the more I do this, the higher my creative output is. And on a more personal note, I feel like creativity for me is about finding yourself in this world. It's about making sense of this world. You could almost call it as a little bit of soul searching. And to be brutally honest, I've realized that creativity for me is about scratching an itch. More often than not, I'm at my most creative when I'm annoyed, when there's a video out there that I'm looking to find that I haven't been able to find. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make this video myself. No one else has done it in the same way or with as clear information. So I'm going to give it my best go. When you're starting a creative pursuit, pursuit, whether that's painting or creating videos, whatever it is, whatever your passion is, get comfortable with the idea that you will not know what this end product is going to be when you start your journey. And that's the exciting bit of it. And this feels so different to what we were taught in school, right? Here's a project, do X, Y, and Z, and have it done in 2 weeks. Those parameters do not lend themselves well to a creative pursuit. Creativity doesn't have an end goal. It's searching in the dark. The only thing you need to remember is you just need to start. And there's a lot of people who talk about the process itself and loving the process, and that's really the core thing to remember here. You have to love your own creative process, and this evolves over time. Because if you love the process and you get comfortable with ambiguity and not knowing what the final product is going to look like, then you can just continually churn at it and continually wake up, have a sprinted effort, rest, reflect on what you've done, come back to it in the morning with fresh eyes, start that process again. And pretty soon, this raw piece of clay starts to take shape. Let's not kid ourselves, right? This process is messy. But like I said, creativity for me is how I make sense of the world. So I guess in that sense, creativity is less about invention and more about listening to yourself. I've realized, with hindsight 2020, that the ideas are always cheap. Execution is everything. And this is true for your creative pursuits or in business. Okay, let's talk about boredom. So I view boredom as a tool, and I think boredom is so underutilized as a tool in today's society. We constantly have the ability to be distracted at all times by this little device and constantly doom scrolling through whatever platform we want to find information that will not help us. So the antithesis to that, I believe, is curating a bit of boredom. And it's also getting comfortable with listening to your thoughts, understanding where they are. But I do believe that anybody out there already has all the tools they need to be creative. You just have to listen to yourself and ask yourself the question, which is, what do I want to pursue? You could almost start off with what's annoying me at the moment? What could I try and solve? What could I try and create? What could be better? That's a great place to start. And when you stack boredom, or honestly, let's call it reflection time, when you stack reflection time on top of your creative sprint, that's when you activate something in your brain called the default mode network. And this default mode network is incredibly important for creative pursuits. It's the part of the brain that connects the dots. And I think what this feels like is that sensation of coming to a project the next day with fresh eyes and a clear mind. Now that I think about it, I have to be honest, I don't think I've ever thought my way to a solution in my life. I don't think I've ever had a aha or eureka moment in my life. Trying things and experimenting and reevaluating is the process of figuring out your creative pursuit. Don't overanalyze. Don't suffer from paralysis analysis. Just put one foot in front of the other, try things, experiment, reiterate, and take your project, inch it along. This is how you discover your creative voice. It's sort of that saying, the obstacle is the way. The object that impedes the path becomes the path. Expect more problems, expect more headaches, but you're moving in the right direction. And the thing about experimenting is if it feels right or wrong with whatever painting you've just finished or video you've just edited. If the tone feels right. And once you have that answer of, okay, it feels good or it doesn't feel good, at least a direction to take. You would have never come to that conclusion if you just tried to brainstorm or think your way through it. You have to do stuff. And I guess the hard part for me that I've experienced in my creative pursuits was asking myself, well, how do I know if it's right? What I've realized over time is that this isn't a thinking process. This is a emotional feeling. You get this energetic buzz in your body of oh yes, this is awesome, this feels great, I love the way this looks. That's the feeling you want to try and steer towards. When it feels like something just clicks, that's when you know you're on the right path. And to take all these thoughts and move them into like the next level, if you can get comfortable with being uncomfortable, as well as being flexible to change, this is going to be the gas on the fire for you. And again, emotionally, this is going to feel awkward. This is going to give you butterflies in your stomach, but that's good. Putting yourself out there. We've all had the critics, not the constructive ones, just the internet keyboard warriors, the people who throw grenades and run away. Like, that is going to be part of the process, but you cannot listen to anyone that doesn't have poker chips on the table, that isn't doing it themselves. You just have to focus on your own internal voice. I would never know when I'm done with like a creative project or a video. I would just realize, you know, I gotta hit upload on this and move on to the next thing. And I think there's always going to be this internal struggle of wanting to feel fulfilled, but at the same time, the only way to expand your creative horizons is to be unsatisfied with your work. This is where the friction is going to be inside of you. And early on, I would beat myself up that, you know, oh, this creative pursuit isn't good enough. But now I ask myself, okay, how could I make this better? How could I step outside myself, look at this objectively, and try and have as little bias as possible, and realize, okay, I could have made this better. I could have spent more time on this intro or on this topic, and then try and build that into the next video I make. So these are my thoughts on creativity. Let me know what your thoughts are. Please leave a comment below. A like is always appreciated. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll chat to you guys soon. Okay, I think we're done. I think we're done.